Executive buy-in and sponsorship is one of the most critical success factors for a digital transformation, but most executives don't know what their role should be or what executive sponsorship means. I'm going to explain what that all means here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital transformation journeys. And as I mentioned, executives need to be heavily involved in a digital transformation in order for it to be successful. They need to be bought in to the project. They need to provide clear vision and direction to the project. Now, a lot of executives think that once they've approved a project, they've signed off on the budget, and they've maybe sent out a few emails, given a presentation about how important the project is to the company, they think that the role stops there. But there's a lot more to being an effective executive sponsor, and executive roles in general for the executive team goes well beyond that simple upfront notion. So what I want to talk about here today are what are the things that can be expected or should be expected of your executive team. And if you're not on an executive or management team, but you're more of a project team member or someone that's involved in a transformation, I highly encourage you to share this video with your executive team to help them understand what their role should be during a digital transformation. Most executives are pretty good at defining a strategy and vision for their organization, but what they also need to do is translate that strategy and vision into what exactly this digital transformation means for the organization. And more importantly, how this digital transformation is going to support that strategy and vision. So for example, a company that has grown through acquisition and has decided that over time they've become too siloed and too independently decentralized, they may decide that a digital transformation is a way for them to standardize business processes and to drive common operating models and operating processes throughout the organization. So that one simple little decision is something that should trickle down to the actual project plan and the way that we implement new technology. And even before that, the way we select and identify what technologies are going to best enable us to do that. So the first thing that executives need to do is set the clear strategy and vision, not just for the company itself, but more importantly, for the digital transformation itself. Digital transformations are much more than a technology project. They entail operational and organizational changes that are pretty significant to most organizations. So one of the roles that executives need to play on these projects is helping be a part of the decision-making process. So for example, what might be best for your sales organization may not be the right answer or the best answer for your finance organization. And there may be a conflict between how we're going to run our business going forward, two things that might be in conflict. So ultimately you need executive leadership to not only set the vision for how the project should look and what goals and objectives the project should achieve, but it should also be part of the key decisions that might be made throughout the organization. Now, it's not just decision making related to situations where different parts of the organizations can't agree. It's also making decisions on what we want our business to be in the future. So the project team and the business owners may have defined certain business processes or operating models or an organizational design that they think makes the most sense for the digital transformation, but the executive and management team needs to be a part of that decision to ensure that that is the right direction for the organization. So getting back to that example of the company that goes through growth via acquisition, an example here might be that the vision was set that for this transformation in this example that they wanted to drive standard business processes and standard operating model throughout the organization. But the digital transformation team might define business processes in a way that's more like the old processes or more like paving the cow paths. So in other words, they're not making enough of a change to the business processes, and that could be a change management issue. So this is an example of where executive leadership and decision making is very important, because oftentimes the executives will need to say, we're not going to do things the way we've always done them. We need to move this direction to better leverage technology and process improvements to make our business more effective. So decision making is something that never really ends. It's something that needs to happen throughout the entire transformation if you're an executive or leader involved in a digital transformation. Executives oftentimes want to delegate the project management function to a project management team or a project leader. And that's understandable. You need someone that's all they're doing is managing the project, providing the overall governance and framework for how the project's going to be managed. But ultimately, executives need to be involved and in the know on what's happening with the project. They need to know not just when there are problems or risk, but Just in general, how's the project going? How are we tracking? What are some of the challenges we're facing? What are some of the key decisions that need to be made at the executive level? So having a cadence and a regular rhythm of meeting with the executive team and having the executive team meet with the project team or the project leadership to ensure that everything is in sync is very important. Now, I'm not suggesting that executives should be the ones that are doing all the day-to-day project management work, but they should be involved in identifying and helping manage and mitigate some of the risks that may happen along the way, whether it's because the organization is resisting the change or because they're having trouble making decisions around business processes, or they're not sure what that future state organizational model might be or what sort of reorg might be coming from this transformation. Those are the sorts of governance types of issues that executives need to provide throughout an entire transformation. Another important role for executives and leadership within an organization is to be the face of the transformation, to be the face of change. And a lot of executives mistakenly think that we're going to send an email and give a presentation at the beginning of the project. We'll give a few updates to the organization along the way, and then we'll go live and we'll be on our way. But the key is that the executives need to be involved in continuously communicating to the organization on what is happening with the project, but more importantly, what the project is doing to enable the strategic goals and objectives. So a lot of times, change management teams or project teams will focus on helping executives just give status updates to the organization. And that's important. People want to know what's going on with the project, when they can expect changes, or when the training might happen. But what's even more important is the what's in it for me. Why are we doing this project? What is it that we're learning throughout the project? What can we expect to change as a result of some of the new roles and new responsibilities, new business processes? All that stuff needs to be communicated by leadership. It's not something that you want to delegate to your project team to communicate to the rest of the organization. So being the face of change and being the one that communicates to the organization is an important role of the executive leadership team throughout a digital transformation. The other role of executives throughout a transformation is to identify the right metrics to measure the project and to ensure accountability and to hold people accountable to achieve those metrics. And when I talk about metrics, I'm not just talking about simple things like implementing on time or on budget. So in other words, not just metrics related to did we hit our milestone, are we going to hit our milestone for going live, or are we going to come in under budget? Those are important metrics, but that's more implementation-based metrics. When I talk about metrics and accountability, I'm talking more about post-implementation metrics and accountability. So in other words, what are the benefits we expect to achieve from this project? How are we going to achieve those benefits, and who are we going to hold accountable for that? And ultimately, how are we going to measure those after we go live, and what's the process to measure and remediate whatever we need to in areas where we haven't achieved that sort of accountability and that sort of performance that we're looking for? So that whole benefits realization process and approach is something that's very important for executives to set the tone for and to hold people accountable to not just implement new technology, but to implement new changes and new transformation type of things that will help enable measurable business improvements. So that's another really important role that the executive team should be playing on your digital transformation. Now, the thing that may be the most important thing on this list, and it's probably the one that's the most overlooked in terms of the role that executive leadership should play during digital transformation, is ensuring that the organization is in control of the project. And what I mean by this is ensuring that we don't delegate too much or defer too much to outside parties, whether it be the software vendor, system integrator, outside consultants, whatever the case may be. And the risk of this phenomena is very high, especially with larger organizations that are more likely to be working with one of the really big system integrators or one of the really big consulting firms. And what happens in those cases is the sheer number of consultants that these consulting firms will staff on projects simply outnumber the internal decision makers on a project. So what ends up happening there as a result is that the system integrator really takes control of the project, and this becomes the system integrator's project, not the internal team's project. And this is something that starts at the top. The executive leadership team needs to set the tone and make sure that we've got a level playing field and more of a true partnership with our internal resources and the external system integrator or consultants. And that's something that most organizations don't do well, and they don't really think about, quite frankly. So executives really need to find a way to ensure that we mitigate that risk of the system integrator completely taking over and taking control of the project, and ensuring that we're driving this project from a business perspective, from a technology agnostic perspective, and doing what's most important for us as an organization, not necessarily what's most important to the system integrator or vendor. So this all starts at the top, and system integrators and big consulting firms know that, and that's why they target the top of the organization and the leadership team to tell them all the things they want to hear, to reassure them that everything's fine, that you can trust the system integrator to handle things for them, and that's a huge mistake that a lot of organizations make. So if you're an executive or leader on a team going through a transformation, I highly encourage you to find ways to take ownership of the project, to selectively use outside help where you need it for certain, but don't rely too much on those outside consultants to take over the project for you. So the main message here is that the executive's role in a digital transformation goes well beyond approving a project, setting a vision for the project, and communicating a few updates to the organization. There's a lot more to it, and most organizations we work with and most executive teams we work with aren't quite ready for that level of commitment. And so that's part of the process, is educating executive leadership on what some of the pitfalls are, what to expect, what some of the risks are that they'll need to be involved with helping mitigate. And the problem is system integrators and software vendors, when they're in sales mode convincing you to move forward with a project, they aren't typically telling you those things. So it's important to recognize early on and err on the side of ensuring that you have heavy executive involvement throughout the digital transformation. Now, if you'd like to learn more about digital transformation best practices, I've included some links below that are particularly useful to executives and also digital transformation project teams and leadership. So I highly encourage you to check out, for example, our 2020 annual digital transformation report, which provides technology agnostic best practices to make your transformation more successful. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.